Okay, so are you ready to dive into the Twilight Saga? We're not here for the romance this time, though.
No sparkles today.
We're going deep on a villain. Some people don't always talk about Victoria.
Oh, interesting. She's fascinating. You think villains, you think power. Right. But Victoria? Nah. She's all about revenge. Pure and simple. Makes her dangerous. Way more than the Cullens realize.
You're right, she's underestimated. You sent me some seriously insightful stuff about her past, what makes her tick, even how different she is in the books and the movies, plus how she measures up against Edward and Bella.
We're going deep on this one.
It's going to be good. To really get Victoria, we got to start with her backstory, right? Because it's easy to be like, oh, she's just James's grieving girlfriend, but there's more there.
Oh, way more. It's not like she was born a vampire, like the Cullens. She got pulled into that life, and it wasn't some romantic transformation scene, not for her. It was brutal, about survival. This is someone who learned to fight from day one of being a vampire, literally.
And that's where her gift, if we can even call it that, comes in her insane ability to survive, to avoid danger.
Exactly. It's not even just speed or strength, though she's got those too. Victoria can just sense danger, always a step ahead. That's how she lived as a nomad, never getting caught, and why she's such a threat to the Cullens, they just don't see it.
And boy, do they underestimate her. Because she's not just surviving, she's strategic, creating that newborn army. Bold move.
Totally. Think about it. Newborns, they're hard to control, all driven by bloodlust. But she doesn't just gather them up, she turns them into a weapon, focuses their chaos on one thing. Getting back at Bella and the Cullens.
It's easy to romanticize the Cullens' whole vegetarian thing, but Victoria's a reminder that the vampire world is savage, and she uses that. It's like she's playing 3D chess while everyone else is stuck on checkers.
Brutal game, too. And we can't forget why she's doing this. It all comes back to James. Yeah, the relationship seems short, especially in the whole Twilight timeline, but that's the heart of everything Victoria does after.
It's true. That connection they had, it was intense, almost animalistic.
Yeah.
Makes you think about the darker side of vampire passion, right? No wonder she wants Bella to feel that same loss.
It's fascinating. On the surface, you think Victoria and Bella, total opposites. But look closer, and there's these weird parallels. Both thrown into this vampire world, both experience this all-consuming love.
Okay, stop. That's a good point. They are both young women, stuck in a world of ancient, powerful beings, falling head over heels.
Right. And where Bella wants protection to fit into this new life, Victoria chooses rage. She refuses to accept losing James, becomes destructive, driven by grief and this need for revenge.
Just like Stephenie Meyer showing us what Bella could have become if she'd gone down a different path, chosen revenge over fitting in.
Exactly. So suddenly, Victoria is not just some evil villain. She makes you think about what happens when love and loss get twisted up together.
Which, honestly, might make her the most human villain in this series. But speaking of different sides, can we talk about how the books and movies portray Victoria?
Oh, yeah. Rochelle Lefebvre versus Bryce Dallas Howard. That sparked some serious debates in the fandom.
And for good reason. They both brought something unique to the role. Lefebvre, to me, she had this rawness, unpredictable, almost wild, truly dangerous.
And you're spot on. Lefebvre was that first wave of grief and rage, very immediate, very visceral. Then Howard takes over, much more composed, calculating. Her Victoria is still terrifying, but in a quieter way.
It's night and day, yet both work.
Oh.
Shows their talent, but it also makes you think about how Victoria changes as a character.
For sure. So Lefebvre gives us that pure, unrestrained grief. Then we get Howard, and it's like Victoria has learned to control that rage, to use it. Almost like we're seeing two stages of her plan for revenge.
Now that is interesting, the initial explosion, then the slow burn.
Exactly. And the way they're portrayed reflects how the books versus the movies tell Victoria's story. In the books, she's this constant threat, hidden, her plans taking shape slowly. Movies, they need action, so she's more directly involved.
Right. In the movies, she's leading that newborn army, fighting the Cullens head on, much more in your face. But you're right, the books, it's all about knowing she's out there, waiting for the perfect moment. So much suspense.
Exactly. Stephenie Meyer did that so well. Even with just a few scenes, Victoria hangs over the entire story.
No doubt. Maybe she's not in it as much as some villains, but she's a force to be reckoned with. And honestly, she might just have the saddest story of them all.
Tragic and scary all at the same time. Victoria shows us that even when you've got vampires and werewolves, it's still human stuff, love, loss, that can push us to do incredible, sometimes awful things.
Well said. But let's take a quick break before we get too philosophical about vampire revenge. Up next, we'll unpack Victoria's mind, her role as this symbol of female power, and why some fans think she's actually the most underrated villain in the whole Twilight Saga. Stick around. And we're back, ready to dig deeper into Victoria's story.
Let's do it. It's survival, obsession, revenge, a lot to unpack.
There's a kind of strength to her, even if it leads to bad places. She's in this world run by powerful guys, James, Edward, the Volturi, yet she finds her own way.
Exactly. And she's not just reacting, she's playing the game and winning. Manipulating people, building alliances, creating an army to challenge the very system that's tried to control her.
And don't forget, she's doing all this while grieving, carrying the loss of James. That says something about her resilience. There's this fierceness, this refusal to be a victim, even if her path is dark.
Oh, absolutely. It's like she embodies this primal energy that vampires have, especially in Twilight. She doesn't hide from it, she owns it, uses it as a weapon.
Totally. It's like she came from this world where survival means tapping into those instincts. And she reminds us, villains, they don't always announce their plans. Sometimes the scariest ones are driven by loss, by that need for payback.
It makes you wonder, is Victoria actually the most underrated bad guy in Twilight? Seriously.
Right. Think about it.
The Volturi, all that power, all those rules, it comes down to force, to scaring people. They're like the big, obvious villains, predictable.
Exactly. Maintaining control, that's their thing. But Victoria, she's playing a different game.
100%. Victoria, she uses her smarts, strategy, pure willpower. Don't forget, she's a survivor. Adapts, learns, comes back stronger. The Volturi don't see it coming, just like the Cullens didn't. And they pay for it.
She's always there. That thorn in their side, messing up their plans, making them react instead of being in charge.
And isn't that the best kind of villain? The ones who make you doubt everything, make you uncomfortable. That's Victoria. She shows how vulnerable those supposedly untouchable vampires really are. Nobody's safe. Not really.
Like the saying, right? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Victoria takes that to a whole new level.
Totally. But we can't forget there's this sadness to her, too. This revenge that never ends. This inability to move on. It eats her up in the end.
That's what makes her so interesting, right?
Yeah.
She's strong and vulnerable, loving and furious all at once. Like she's caught in a trap of her own making, can't escape the pain of losing James.
It makes you think, what if James hadn't died? Could she have found peace then? Or was this her path all along?
Now, those are the questions. It's true what they say. Everyone sees themselves as the good guy, right? Maybe in Victoria's head, she was fighting for something she believed in, for a love that was taken from her.
Exactly. That's what's so great about these complex characters. They make us look deeper, question good and evil, see how much nuance there is to being human, even in a story about the supernatural.
Makes you think of that line from Gatsby. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Victoria's whole story, it's like that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Fighting against this tide of grief.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's perfect. And it makes her story so tragic. Because that love she's fighting for, it only exists in her memory, a past she can't get back. You see the damage she causes, but you still feel for her a little.
It's true. And yet, right at the end, there's this glimpse of, I don't know, something human.
You're talking about an Eclipse, when she sees Seth, the young werewolf, protecting Bella. Something changes in her, like she recognizes something she thought was gone forever.
Yes. It's subtle, but it's there. Makes you wonder, could she have made a different choice? Even without James, could she have found peace?
See, that's the mark of a truly great villain, right? That little piece of humanity reminds you they're capable of feeling, of connection, even when they choose darkness. Doesn't make what they did okay, but it makes them interesting.
Definitely. And that's what makes Victoria more than just a revenge story. We get her pain. We see how her own lost love fuels what she does to Bella. She's not just a monster. She's a reflection of what any of us might do when faced with grief that big.
Stephenie Meyer did that so well. Even with a character like Victoria, not in every scene doing terrible things. She still makes you think.
She reminds us everyone has a story, a reason for what they do.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes those reasons take us down some dark roads.
Roads that make you question good and bad. Heroes and villains, all of it. And that's the power of a good story, right? Exploring those messy parts, the gray areas, so we understand ourselves and the world a little bit better.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So next time you're with Bella and Edward, take a second look at Victoria. She's more than just a vengeful vampire. She's a study in grief, in resilience, in how powerful love can be, even when it turns dangerous.
Exactly. You might be surprised how complex she is, how much depth she has, how tragic her story really is.
And on that note, until next time, keep diving deep, everyone. Remember, there's always more than meets the eye.